All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Beneath the Helmet. This is season 4. You are listening to episode 109. I'm your host, Arjuna George, former fire chief turned podcaster, author, and coach to the fire service. Today, I get to have the pleasure of sitting down with a TEDx speaker, an author, a wellness coach, and a leadership strategist, also the founder of The Human Resolve. Today's discussion is all going to be around crisis leadership, improving our decision making, which is very critical for the first responder world. So, welcome to our podcast, Savio Clemente. Welcome to the show.
It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
Thank you, Arjuna. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to serving your audience today. So we'll see what we serve.
I love it. I love it. So tell our listener a little bit, I kind of touched on who you are, but kind of what brought you to the work you're doing today.
Yeah, so I would say it was something as devastating as a cancer diagnosis in 2014. I came back from a trip with a friend. I ended up going to the hospital because I had drenching night sweats, and then my stomach started getting distended. About an hour and a half later, they admitted me to the 5th floor, and then later that night, I heard they were going to transfer me to the 7th floor, which they call the cancer floor. It ended up being stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a blood cancer. The hospital for 15 days. 2 days before I left, the medical director came and said to me, you needed to start my first round of something called RCHOP chemotherapy. So I didn't really have an option or a choice because I was bedridden for a week in the hospital because of the stomach distension. And after I left the hospital, I had 5 more rounds of that RCHOP chemotherapy every 3 weeks. And fortunately, 4.5 months later, I received my remission status, and I was in remission for a good decade until June of 2024 when I had the relapse.
So since this work that you're kind of going into crisis and challenging times, turbulent times, turning that into good things, what did you learn about your first diagnosis to the second diagnosis? Anything that's kind of really stands out for you?
Yeah, I would say the first diagnosis versus the second is I didn't really know or give myself permission to recover. I was someone who always pushed forward. And so the first time was just trying everything beyond RCHOP chemotherapy. I also did a whole bunch of integrated modalities. I felt like I had to throw the kitchen sink at it versus the second time, which was a lot more involved. Basically, it involved 2-3 day stays in the hospital, injecting myself to stimulate my stem cells, getting a neck catheter, and getting stem cell harvesting. Then going to the hospital. Typically, it's 3 weeks. I was there for 4 weeks because I had tachycardia. Every time I would stand up, my pulse would be like 160, 170, to the point where I had to actually be rushed to the ICU to get norepinephrine. And I left the hospital. They did scans. And fortunately, I got a complete response. But then my doctor's like, there's a clinical trial where you could do an immunotherapy as an extra insurance policy. So I did that for 4.5 months. And I did 5 months of physical therapy. So what that taught me was that you can give yourself permission to recover, that you don't have to always push forward, that you don't have to always optimize. It's more about integration and allowing, surrendering, submitting. And that's kind of what I did. I reframed the chemotherapy as an elixir or as something like a mana from the universe rather than a poison that's there to ravage. Yes, it has side effects. Yes, I experienced them. I know them really well. But you also have to allow and you have to receive. And I also sunk into 2 things, which was silence and stillness. And I know that might sound a little strange to a lot of people, but in that there's a reservoir of power, in that it can't be discounted. It's available to any of us, anywhere, anytime. And it also taught me second time around that I don't have the answer to it, that I could hope, wish, and pray, but some things are mysterious. And I have to lean into the fact that as long as I do what I can, whatever I can control is really the crux of it all. I used things like positive psychology, this idea of psychological distancing, so distancing myself from the problem and seeing myself as the physical person who's attached to all these machines, and yet I had a vibrant spirit, or my mental acuity was still there, my semblance of sort of care and empathy for people was still there, and so I leaned into that as well.
It's a beautiful reframe on, the we always think of chemo and cancer as very bad, and it is bad, not to take that away from it, but you have no other choice other to drown in that bad or take it as a positive, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
so is this what launched you into speaking, writing, and kind of focusing on healthcare leadership?
Sure. So I would say that I was always a writer, so a journalist. At this point, I've interviewed like over 2,000 um, thought leaders, change makers, even celebrities. So that was paramount. I also was a board certified wellness coach, so I used that to my advantage. But about a year and a half before my relapse, I did a TEDx talk, and the TEDx talk was entitled 7 Minutes to Wellness: How to Love Your Inner Stranger. And people often are confused. They're like, what do you mean inner stranger? I'm like, well, what does it that mean to you? I said, I left it ambiguous on purpose. And they're like, well, what is it to you? And I'm like, well, the inner stranger to me was that young person who never felt completely rooted or grounded. So much so, a friend used to say that I was a nomad. Not really a nice thing to say, but that's what he would say. And I would have to agree with him at the time. I felt displaced. Things were fine in terms of my home and my perceived life, but internally I felt that way. And she's like, oh, for me, the inner stranger then is that professional woman that I can't, it's that idealized woman that I can't be, or that great mother or that great sibling that I want to be. She's like, okay. And so, and so I created a mini framework within the framework called the Aloha Reboot. As we all know, aloha means hello in Hawaiian. So it's hello to your inner self. And it's very simple. It's 7 minutes a day. It's A stands for acknowledge. So acknowledge where you are. Don't pretend. Like I didn't pretend that I didn't want to be in the. I was in the hospital. I was in a precarious situation. I was tied to these machines. I was in a quarantine room. They would come every 4 hours to do vitals. I did have diarrhea issues. I did have lethargy. I didn't want to eat. Like all that is real. So just be real about what's happening, whether that's a word vomit, mental vomit, typing it out, writing it out, drawing it out, whatever. L stands for listening. So listen to your inner self. Now, in Hawaiian, they actually have a healing modality called Huna healing. And in Huna healing, they actually believe that the body has messages for you, that it has resonance, that you can talk to it, that beyond just the sensations, it has in consciousness, it has intelligence. And so in order to tap into that, you have to either be in a flow state or stillness or calm or silence in order to ferret out that information. I wouldn't say doing that in front of other people is probably the smartest idea because they're going to think you're strange, but in the privacy of your own home, it might work. O stands for opening. So open yourself up to this. This, no matter what your belief system is, or even if you don't have a belief system, you're just exploring self. So that's not a big deal. H stands for harnessing. So harness that information, make the mental connection, see what works, what doesn't work, because not everything's going to work. And A stands for acting. But I always put a caveat to it. It's act with courage because it takes courage to change. It takes courage to move forward. And there is studies and evidence that change is not really about the fact that people don't want to change. That change really is people don't know how to change. They don't know where they are in that sort of idea of change, whether they're thinking of changing, wanting to change, being in action of change, relapsing and wanting to go back. And so it's very important that you, as the adage goes, to know thyself is to heal thyself. And so the work really was through that. Right now, my lane is healthcare leadership because for me, it's really allowing healthcare leaders who make high stakes decisions, not only for themselves and their organization, but for another human being. And so a lot of people think that once you survive the crisis, it's over with. But no, that's where you actually lose because you have to then recalibrate and figure out for yourself how to move forward. It's not even a new normal, it's a new way forward. And so a lot of the times that pressure, it really hasn't gone, it's just gone quiet, but it has really gone internal. And so that's where performance is usually won or lost. And so I get great joy out of speaking, coaching, and even interviewing healthcare leaders because I study not only from my own experience, but from what I've seen and what I know to be true. Two times, a title I never thought I would want, which was granted to me.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's probably a bit of giving back to the community that supported you for so many decades as well, right? So,
Absolutely, especially when you find the care is supported extremely well.
mhm,
And, I was just another patient to them. They didn't know that I was sort of collating information because I wanted to learn. I wanted to say to myself that even though something bad is happening to me, that maybe something out of this can germinate wisdom for myself and other people. And so I always made it a point to just be open to that information every day, even though I felt like I didn't feel great every day.
I'm curious what your inner stranger is telling you these days. This month, this last couple of weeks, today, who knows?
Yeah, a couple of new opportunities I never thought of are sort of coming up, which I thought was interesting. They involve travel, which is really
Nice.
fascinating and really great to me. And what most people don't know is when you have a stem cell transplant, a couple of things happen. One is that they actually give you another birth date. I thought they were like telling me like some woo-woo concept. They're like, no, it's actually considered a medical rebirth because once your bone marrow is depleted, you're technically physically a new person. And so that they feel like that takes time, it takes 1 to 2 days, but they actually count the days after you get it. So I have a birth date, an actual birth date in the winter, and now I have an actual birth date in the summer.
Wow.
And yeah, which is really fascinating. And second thing, which I didn't know as well, beyond the fact that it takes up to 1 to 2 years for your body to reconstitute, and that's just average. Um, the other thing is that all your childhood vaccinations that you got are completely gone, completely eliminated. So I'm on batch number 5 of vaccinations, and some of them were like 8 vaccinations per batch. And so I had no idea
Mhm.
that I got that many vaccinations throughout my lifetime until I had to get them again as an adult. In
Wow.
the system, they actually name it childhood vaccinations. They actually showed me the screen. I'm like, okay. But
Wow.
so now I'm protected to some degree, so I feel more comfortable to travel because that's the one thing you have to watch out for when it comes to a stem cell transplant is being susceptible to infections. So my inner stranger is really telling me that I feel like I see a green light, like a traffic light, rather than for almost 2 years seeing sometimes a red and definitely a yellow traffic light.
It's a nice visual. Yeah. Well, I applaud you on your journey and your strength and sharing this with the world, right? Sharing this through your books, through your coaching, through your leadership speaking. Thanks for sharing it because I know you're making an impact on many, many
Thank you.
people.
Thanks,
So
Arjuna.
before we dive into kind of crisis leadership and decision making, kind of something that's near and dear to your heart, I'd love to hear how you define resilience, because I know that's a key word these days. Everyone's kind of throwing that word around. Everyone's got a bit of a slight twist on what it means to them. So I'd be curious, just kick it off. What does resilience mean to you?
Yeah. I would say resilience, as we all know, and I know, it's this idea of bouncing back. Something happens, you find a way to bounce back. And to some degree, I think I was a poster child of that for a decade after my cancer diagnosis the first time. But I like to have it upgraded a little bit, and I actually call it adaptive resilience. Is this idea that when I was in the SHIT, how did I handle it? Was I flexible? Did I create strategies from it? Was there any opportunities for me to learn, know, and see? Classic example, I would have nurses come and check my vitals. I would survey them as much as I could. There was another human being, so I wanted to be present for them, and I wanted to mirror the same care they were giving me as what they were giving to another patient. And so for me, they all told me, they're like, everyone wants to rush to go home. They're like, I've seen it time and time again. And then they have to come back. I'm like, really? I'm like, oh. So I actually had the courage one day when the doctors did their rounds. I think it was like 13 or 14 of them deep with like nurses and doctors. And I was like, listen, I just wanted to say that I'm not like your other patients. I have no desire to go home early. I would love to go, but I want you to discharge me when you feel I'm ready because I do not want to come back here. I have no desire to come back here. I'm like, okay, all right. And so that to me is what I like to now say about resilience. It's not just about bouncing back, is how are you able to adapt within the pressure, within the stress, within the not knowing. And that's the thing about cancer is that there's this question mark because someone else could be given the same type of medicines and their body doesn't react to it. So how can you use your own physical operating system, knowing who you know and who you are, your psychology, your mental, whatever. How can you use all those things to better handle what's happening to you in the moment and not trying to pretend that you're great or you're right? Actually, as a matter of fact, I was actually challenged, I think day 2 of my stay. A doctor came in. He's like, how you doing? I'm like, I'm doing good. I'm doing okay. He's like, if you're doing okay, why are you here? What? I was like, what? This guy is like, okay. So I took it in. I was like, okay. I swallowed that comment. I didn't hold it against him. There must be a reason why he said it, whatever the reason was. But I also had to look and say to myself, are you really okay, Savio? You're not. You're strapped to these machines. You need to accept it. Like this is actually happening to you. So that was a great lesson in that.
So, kind of talking about crisis leadership and resilience and developing that, you developed this kind of formula or model to kind of go through that. I'm curious when you see leaders in healthcare systems struggle after crisis. What are you seeing in leaders that are struggling in that crisis? What is it that you're seeing on a regular basis?
Yeah. So the framework I developed was called the Adaptive Resilience Framework. And it's just basically identifying the stress signals and the patterns to convert it into clarity. And so when it comes to healthcare leaderships, what is the number one thing that most of them do? They sit behind a title and a role, a huge responsibility. So I'm not trying to minimize that. They have high stakes because they're caring for themselves and for another person. But they also have to answer to organization, to the boards, to their license, and all the people that govern that. And so I think it's important for them to, a large degree, take away some of that cognitive pressure and that overload that happens because they themselves are overwhelmed with either so many administrative or bureaucratic changes that's happening, or they themselves are not regulated. I don't know if you watch the show, The Pit on HBO Max, but I love the show. But I'll be truthful with you, Arjuna. My nervous system is a complete wreck watching that show. Literally is, and I put myself through that because it's entertaining and I love Noah Weil in the show. But it really, and I know it's for TV and I know it's hyper focused on certain areas, but it does show you the humanity and the humanness behind those who make critical decisions for someone else. And I think it's important for us to understand there is a human being behind that. And so a lot of the times they're working with that and they have an armor with that. And I like to tell the story that right before my relapse, my editor gave me an assignment. So my beat is really leadership, wellness, healthcare. He's like, "Do you want to cover the red carpet Oscars?" I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay." So I went and I'm standing next to a lot of publications, big time publications. They're coming, and I realized something. Oh, these actresses and actresses, they're acting still. Like it didn't dawn on me. I thought they were just real people enjoying the day, but no, they were acting for me, saving good face for me as a journalist. They're handlers, they're managers, the photographers. They're still playing a role, and I think we need to demystify that because I think that's what's really hindering us is that we live in a world where there's so much content saturation, especially with so much disruption politically, socially, but also with technology, with AI, that content is not where we're lacking nowadays. It's about actually implementing the content and making it more relatable to another person going through it. And so that's the work. I enjoy it because I live to tell the tale of what it is like to be inside of it rather than just seeing it from an objective. It was more subjective and more real, and pressure and high stakes. And I didn't even know if I was going to leave the hospital. I mean, there wasn't cases where it was dire, but I lost 26 pounds in 29 days. Uh, for like a week, I had no appetite at all. I am someone who doesn't really drink soda, and I had my parents bring me soda in order to just chug the big medications and stuff that they gave you, because I couldn't take water anymore. It was driving me crazy. And so you have to do what you got to do.
So can you walk us through this framework and how a leader listening right now could maybe utilize some of those components or connect with you in the future to kind of dive into this a little deeper?
Yeah, so it really mirrors the Aloha Reboot that I mentioned. And it also just allows you to actually figure out for yourself, well, what are the steps necessary in order to move forward with said block, said problem, uh, said situation that's at hand. I think most of the time, especially when it comes to healthcare leadership, there's so many voices in the room, and sometimes your voice, you feel like you need to speak it out louder rather than listen. So part of this is also this idea of listening as well. But I think for the most part, most of my work really lies in the intersection of actually feeling into the information that's been given rather than doling out what you think is the necessary steps to move forward. I think it's really important in the world that we live in right now. I'm running an interview series with CEOs and CMOs. And even for me, it was shocking to know that the United States in healthcare costs, it's about $935 billion a year. Why do you think that is? It's not just all in equipment and it's in the humans. It's in the labor that's behind all those decision making. And so the framework itself, it really allows you to actually hone in on what's important and then do a bit of reverse engineering and trying to figure out what are the steps necessary to get to said goal. But also really to focus on this idea of vision. In coaching, we talk about vision. Vision is not a goal. Vision is how you want to be, how you want to sort of feel. What do you want to reclaim? And I think to ask those hard questions is really important. I can get sort of in the weeds of what healthcare leaders want, which is this idea of, strategic reversals and increasing ramp and, figuring out the post-crisis momentum. But to someone listening right now, it's just content. It can
Yep.
go
Yep.
above their head. But of course, these are important things. And
For
these
sure.
are things that can be measured and can be changed. And so I think allocating the right amount of time and effort into that is really the key. But the work is done, I believe, internally. It always has. People always look for an external answer, and it's
Mhm.
always about the internal work. So
Mhm.
it's a lot of touchy-feely stuff too, which is not really a major thing for especially a lot of males. But
For sure. Yeah, it's changing, but yeah, it's still a a challenge for many of us for sure.
yeah.
So you originally talked about sometimes after a crisis, leaders will stall out and kind of almost ignore that stressor or pressure that they're under. What would you suggest to that person who's listening right now and says, "Yeah, that sounds like me"?
Well, it's are you okay? So we talk about this idea of, I mentioned psychological distancing, right? Having that buffer between you and the problem. So really name it. I think it's important to label things nowadays. I think it's important to label things now. I said that twice on purpose because I think it's easy for us to dismiss something that's gnawing at us, that's biting at us, that's weighing on us, and just say that it's because of this and because of that. But where is the origin story with you and that situation? How did that even start? This begs the question, well, what's actually leadership then? So what is a leader? A leader doesn't always have to be in a corporate setting. A leader is just someone that individuals want to emulate, want to embody, to some degree want to mirror, and want to follow. And so I think it's important for them to kind of figure out for themselves, what are the motivating factors that are driving you? What's what is getting in the way of your perceived ideal and what is getting in the way of what you think your perceived ideal is. Like, which is truth in that? Because I think in a world, especially in the last few years, where truth has been obfuscated, a lot of it has, whatever political spectrum you're on, it doesn't really matter. I think in general, it bled into our day-to-day decision making as well, which is really dangerous. So stop, reassess, figure out for yourself, breathe into your situation. So figure out for yourself exactly what's happening. Um, and then we can get a little like mystical here a little bit if you want. We can talk about this idea of metacognition. So I learned firsthand what that was in real life in a lived experience, which is the thinking of the thinking. So who is actually in the hospital room and why am I thinking what I'm thinking and who is outside of this experience and why is my spirit forget about that? Why is my mental forget about that? Why is my psychology still active and still running? Who is doing the thinking of the thinking? So it's a very heady thing. I like to lightly touch on it because then people get all into the weeds about it. But I often tell people what works for you. Is it prayer? Is it journaling? Is it meditation? Is it breathing? Whatever works for you is the right modality for you. Don't listen to someone who tells you to do something that you yourself can't do. Like a lot of people I know can't meditate, and that's fine. You don't have to. It doesn't have to, and it doesn't have to be formalized like lotus position. That's great if that's your thing. It could just be as simple as listening to instrumental music, lying down, and just coming into some semblance of understanding as to who is actually present in this moment right now. It's not always about clearing the mind. It could be. It's not always about getting some great, wonderful idea for the next billion-dollar company, although that's great. It's about allowing yourself to be. And how do you allow yourself to be is that you have to actually remove the barriers from you. That's the only way to be. Because if you have constant things being pulled at you, tugged at you, weighted on you, you will never be free. And I think that's what we're kind of all looking for that, right? Some idea or some taste of freedom within ourselves.
Yeah, we're always searching it, but on the flip side, we're always searching for the next big thing. I got to take this course. I got to get this degree. I got to write this book. I got to do this. I got to do that. And sometimes doing what we're doing is totally fine.
Yeah.
We
And
don't
also
always have to improve.
100%. That's
Mhm.
the one thing that I learned even from my own recovery is that I don't always have to optimize. I don't always have to fix. I don't always have to track. I mean, that's great, but I don't always have to do that. That the progress comes in the recovery. The progress comes in the rest. The progress comes in the permission. It's like, it's this adage of, or this example of you have a big pot of water. You cannot fill anything in that pot if that pot is still full. You have to empty out the contents for new, fresh waters to come and take its place. So, whatever that means in your life, if that means job, relationships, family, well, okay, hopefully not family, but family, whatever that is, you have to allow, because I think we have to understand that this is to some degree an adventure. Yes, it's bitter. I've had two bitter experiences with it, but it's still something for us to discover, whatever that mystery is, whatever your belief system is, whatever you think this experience is. I think it's trying to show us something. And I think we need to really, really, really try to be open to what it's trying to show us.
And like you said before, give some space, some silence, um, to that for that to come up. If you're always going, you're never going to have
Yep.
the Zen moment, the space to allow that to pop up, right, and listen to it. So
Yeah. And then also, you are constantly, if you're constantly trying to fix something, and trust me, I grew up trying to fix a lot of things. If you're constantly trying to fix something, you're never going to be finished.
in the fire service, especially, we're fixers. That's what we do every day. We fix, fix, fix. And when you do that every day, you're going to use that in your own personal life as well, not just when you're
Exactly.
on the job, right? So
Exactly. And what challenged me also throughout this process is how can I find a little bit of joy with all the sorrow? Because I tell people all the time, I could live in the wound, Arjuna, but I choose to live in the walk. I would rather think about what can I do to make things easier. Maybe not better, but easier for myself. rather than fixing. I can spend a whole day talking about the side effects and the wounds and my appointments and 6 PET scans and 4 CT scans and MRIs and all the radiation and all. I can spend a whole day talking about that, but that's going to do no one any good and certainly not going to do me any good. So I'd rather talk about things that I've learned, I've gleaned, I've understood, I've made mistakes, I've created successes through, because not only can that help me and my discovery, but hopefully I can help some other people as well.
That's a great way to live. So kudos to you for having that mindset shift and taking that, kind of positive mindset every day, right?
Absolutely.
So, as leaders, what do you think some of the maybe just the key uh, issue regarding leadership crisis, resilience that we tend to ignore? What do you think would be the one that is like, yeah, this sticks out to me as like we ignore this as leaders. We need to pay a little bit more attention, a little bit more focus on this one issue.
Well, leaders are always focused on performance, their performance, other people's performance, but performance does not automatically stop after a crisis. It drifts, and that drift then creates a gap, and that gap creates a chasm, and so it gets bigger and bigger until you can never really rebound from it, until you do the hard work necessary. So I would say it's just realizing the fact that where does your acceleration point lie and your de-acceleration point lie, and through those two extremes, where is the set point? Like, where's the middle ground with that? What is something that you allow and what is something that you don't allow? So I think there's power in saying no to certain things, even for yourself, even from some of the tasks that you need to get done. And, I'm a huge proponent of using AI responsibly. So if you have a whole load of information, then yeah, maybe Claude or some other AI can do some of that extra work for you. But the humanness aspect, that's our job. That's what I think that's what we're all here for, is try to come to some understanding of all the complexity that life throws at us.
You could grade today's healthcare system in America because that's where you're from, but maybe North America. What kind of grade would you give it on the human side of things?
So I don't want to personalize this, because if you ask me from my experience from start to finish, even from 2014 to now, I would actually give it probably an A minus. But I've also seen it in other forms through family members, friends, my own study of it, my own interviewing of individuals, my own keynote speaking, all that. I would probably say it's like a C plus. I'm not saying it's really bad, because it's just not. I mean, there's other countries, third world countries, that people don't have access to it. And even if they have access to it, it's too expensive to access. So there's like logistical, we at least have infrastructures here that, that are in place. But in the US, I do think it needs a rework and a remodeling. And I also think, and this is a little controversial because I'm a board certified health and wellness coach. I think that when it comes to health and wellness, it's siloed, and one is definitely thinks they're more superior than the other. And to a large degree, yes, you need clinical, you need actual vetted documentation, you need, double blind studies, you need all these things. But what did people in ancient societies do before modern medicine? What did they do before scientific invention? They relied on nature. And I always go back to Eastern philosophy. Nature has its own way. It's what someone said to me. She was a forest bather. I was in Austria and Italy on the border. And she says, nature doesn't need us. We need nature. And so Eastern philosophy will always teach you that the river does not rush, that the sea does not rush. It has its own time. It knows its own direction. And so to a large degree, I think it can definitely get better, but there are situations where, especially here in the US, I can speak for that, is that it's to a large degree not only accessible, but there's identity politics involved, and there's also geographic limitations involved as well.
Interesting. So I think when we talk about leadership crisis, there's also this huge, what I see obviously in a lot of coaching is that decision fatigue.
Yep.
And I think that's a huge component that a lot of high performing leaders struggle with. Any thoughts or tips you would provide the listener who's listening right now saying, man, every day I just feel overwhelmed. I'm on the verge of burnout. How do I combat this and live a better life at work and maybe at home as well?
Yeah. I would say first you need to resource, uh, brain dump, whatever you want to call it, resource exactly what's going on. Like I said before, name it, claim it. It's important. Naming it doesn't mean that you have to identify with it. Naming it is just putting a voice to it. Then I would also challenge them to do some embodiment work. So a lot of my work is also somatic. So soma means the body. So we would ask a question like, where in your body do you actually feel that pain or that information? Because the body stores trauma, the body stores memory, the body stores information. So I would actually allow them to actually locate physically in their body beyond the stress or the weight of it as to what's going on. Um, I would allow them to breathe or to acknowledge what's actually happening at the moment. And then to some degree use a visualization if they're open to it to move that. So think of it like an elevator. It's mostly, we all mostly live in our heads. I've definitely copped to that. I've gotten better at it as I've gotten older. And to just like you're going down to floor number B or C all the way down, and to have it come down more into the heart or to the gut and see what can be revealed from that. Most of this process is not something that can be doled out because everyone's experience is different. And we also hold on to memory. And so there's memory issues there with that. There's ties and connections that we're facing, let's say a stressor at the moment, but it's actually really linked to maybe something that happened years ago. And the only way that can be understood is either through coaching or mentoring or a therapist, whatever the case may be. And that's the thing that most people don't understand about coaching. Coaching is not therapy. It's not really mentoring. It's allowing you to figure out the answers for yourself by just guiding that process. People often get it confused. And when you know your lane, you know exactly what the individual has said, whether verbally or non-verbally, and what their body language is actually expressing. But not only that, but how is our relational in coaching, let's say, for example, how is actually that informing the process itself? Because I'm learning from you, you're learning from me, we're mirroring each other. There's an exchange happening there. And so from that, um, there's resonance. Um, and hopefully, after the process, there's integration. So really, the key is just to actually be allowed to express those things. Because I think to a large degree, most of us are not allowed to express those things. They were either repressed or not given space to flourish. That could be a whole situation, family, politics, communal structure, your personality type, a whole bunch of things. But I think once you get into a container, whatever that container is, whether it's a coaching container or a therapy container, it allows for safety. And safety is the number one thing that people are lacking in being able to not only express, but being able to address exactly what's happening.
For the leader who's listening right now saying, I'm pretty unregulated day to day, what would change in their life if they became a little bit more regulated and more grounded? What do you think, just generically, what would change in most leaders that you've seen in the past?
I think instead of actually like performance based, relying on their particular ways and modes of doing things, I think what would end up happening is they would allow other people to support them in those decision making. So in other words, instead of taking all the responsibility onto themselves, and yes, they have chosen that role or that role has been given to them or granted to them. I'm not trying to discount the fact that they earned that role, but if they allow themselves to be more open and more composed and have more clarity, others can resonate from that because we don't really change people. People actually change because we changed or we adjusted or we recalibrated. And so therefore they have to change to some degree. That might take time. I think also and this is a word that, I know I don't use too often, but I think we could have more joy. And even through the stuff that I've been through, I still try to find pockets of joy. I love laughter. Netflix helped me a lot during my recovery. And I wasn't a Netflix chill kind of guy, but I gave myself that ability to feel into and feed myself things that were missing, because no one understood. I mean, no one can. I can't put that responsibility or that onus on someone else. No one's going to understand what not only my body is going through, but what my mind and my emotions are going through, and my psychology is going through, and my nervous system is going through. And so I made it a personal mission to inform everybody that I would, respond to your text messages, but I have no desire to call you or speak to you over the phone. I mean, my immediate family, of course, they had access to me, but because I knew for myself I had to create that boundary, because I can't be any good to anybody if I'm not good to myself. And that's the number one rule that I think people, whether that's in business or in personal, I think it's important to know where you stand with certain things.
Yeah, capacity is the word that keeps popping in my mind. It's
Yep.
like trying to be a leader with low capacity, you're going to be struggling the whole
Yep.
time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting you said joy, because that was in my book. I talk about joy. I didn't even know the word, honestly. Like I knew the word, but I never used the word joy in my entire life being an adult until going through burnout, realizing that my life had diminished joy and I was just work, work, work. And now joy is a huge part of my life. I make sure it's part of my day to day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
that's the
mean,
word I use as well.
even during Christmas time, they would sing "Joy to the World." I'm like, okay.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, I get it.
So when work piles up on us, and everyone listening right now probably has a stack of emails, a stack of paperwork. How do you suggest to others how to manage a little overwhelm and to regain some balance in life? What's your strategy? Is it your framework, or is there something even deeper?
Well, it's obviously my framework is part of it's just
Mhm.
built into me, and
Yeah.
it's not something that I just concocted out of thin air. It came from my understanding, my deep listening, and my lived experience.
Mhm.
So beyond the frameworks, because everyone loves a great framework, right? Everyone loves a
Yep.
great map, everyone loves a
Yep.
great thing to follow, and that's wonderful. But I will caution to everyone, and I caution it to myself, that's also very heady. That's also very intellectualized. And that's great because we want to make sure we're following it correctly, right? If you go 6 miles east rather than 6 miles west, you're like you're lost. We're ingrained, we're trained for that. But I will actually say what's actually helped me now is I'm taking it from this. She's an organizational. She sort of allows people to be more organized. Maria Kondo, you probably know,
Mhm.
and her thing is very simple. I mean, she looks at clothes and she said, "Does this spark joy? Yes or no?"
Yeah.
And I'm not, and I know in business it's probably not going to work because there's some things that we have to just do, data driven, financials, all those things that it's not fun. But I will say it's really allowed me to sort through what I want to actually tackle first for the day if it sparks joy in me. And so it's just very simple. If it doesn't, it goes in another pile. It's not in the garbage because I would never do that. I wish I could donate it to someone and have them do it, but I can't because that's where Marie Kondo says just donate the clothes. But in all seriousness, I would say you can compartmentalize things in your life. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I think a lot of us, especially leaders, feel like they have to be the one that's at the helm. They have to be the one that executes. They have to be the one that dictates. And that's true to certain roles, but you can fashion your team in such a way where you can kind of lean on each other. And the way you do that is through trust exercises, is through actually getting to know, their strengths, their weaknesses, and their motivation. And also, if they're also focused on the vision or the goal, because a lot of times we change as people. And I mean, as a matter of fact, I just lost a really close friend, probably about like a month ago. It got really strange. And I know, and this might be controversial, but I know that me being a two-time cancer survivor is triggering for a lot of people. It just is. I'm sensitive enough to know this. It's not something I'm making up. I know that some people, if you say you're a cancer survivor once, it makes them think about their mortality. It makes them think about people that they've lost or people that are suffering with it. And then if you tell people a second time that you're now a two-time cancer survivor, they're thinking, well, why you and why not my mom? Or and so he got really strange. He said some strange things, and unfortunately, sometimes the boundaries have to be set so that you go another way. I wish him well, but you can't travel with me anymore. I'm just like, I can't do it. And so sometimes you have to make those hard decisions as well.
And you've mentioned boundaries 2 or 3 times now, at least. I know that was a huge part of my healing journey as well. Anything you want to expand on that about boundaries?
Yeah, I think people think boundaries has to be like what was that cartoon back in the day that if you cross the boundary you would like completely like evaporate, you know? It doesn't have to be so dramatic. It doesn't have to be so a boundary really, and when I use the word boundary, I just mean a dividing line between an energetic acceptance of someone, a situation, of whatever it is in your life. And so a boundary just means that what will you say yes to? What will you accept in your life? Something that you should spend your time, energy, and focus on, and what things that you don't want to, or not even that, but that you've graduated from. And it doesn't mean that you don't care for their welfare if it's a person, say, so to speak. Doesn't mean that you don't care for their welfare. Doesn't mean that you wish them ill. It just means that you're traveling. If you look at Eastern philosophy once again, you're just going in a different direction of where the river is going. We may meet at some point, we may not, but I thank you for your presence in my life. But we have to go our separate ways.
You definitely are an example of reframing mindsets. So, how would you reframe for somebody who has a tough time saying no? What would you say? Hey, if you say no more often, this is going to happen. Or, and just, short and sweet of how that would change somebody's mindset, and allowing them to say no more often.
Yeah. I would say it depends upon the situation, but if you express to them, and I do have a friend who has this, she's expressed to someone else about the fact that she's overstepping what she's comfortable with, and the person keeps doing it. I would say you have to look once again deeper within and actually say to yourself, where in your life has this ever happened before? And look and track it and actually see what was the end result of allowing that over and over again. Did it lead to anything positive? Did it lead to any growth? Did it lead to, because some things can be negative and still be growth, right? Some things can be positive and still not be growth. So you have to discern that and figure out for yourself where in the past has that led to greener pastures or something better for yourself. Now, if it hasn't, then you have to look at yourself and say, well, what is my operating system? What is my actual state saying? Well, not that I'm judging, but it's actually saying that you're allowing people to some degree to walk all over you or abuse you. And that's harsh words. I totally understand. But it's basically allowing people to manipulate you for their own purpose.
So true.
And it doesn't have to be so black and white, but it does bleed itself from allowing you to be the fullest version that you can possibly be. Because what you're doing is you're allowing people to then categorize you and say to them, this is who Savio is, and this is going to be our relationship. It doesn't afford you the ability to be free again because they themselves are viewing you in a certain way. So I would say first, try to figure out for yourself what is the motivating factor there. Why are you still keeping them? Especially if you've expressed many times to them. Now, if the point is that you're not courageous enough to express that, then I would say that that's there's some work that needs to be done in terms of figuring out for yourself, well, where do you get your strength and your motivation from? Is it from external sources or is it from internal? Because as you know, anything externally can be taken away from us, but internally is the reservoir of things that no one can take away from us. So I would definitely have them do the work.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. The classic people pleaser, right, is all external. None of it's internal, right?
Well, then it's also part of the blamers, right? Who blame all the time. But I don't like to, I'm very cognizant of using words because people then assume certain words or certain things. So I try to keep it as friendly as possible
Yes.
in order for people to understand that it doesn't have to be all or nothing in that sense.
So, Savio, is there a question that you wish I asked you that I have not asked you yet?
I would probably say the question is that how do I move forward when I myself are not regulated?
Such an important one. Okay, so share with the listener how maybe your own experience or what you'd advise the listener to do.
Mm. I would say have them question what regulation actually means in their life. Because some people like the drama, they just do.
Mhm.
Some people like the fact that they're being called on to help. They just do. I'm not here to judge that. I'm not here to tell you to get into balance or whatever, because balance is one thing to one and another to another. So I would say when it comes to regulation, I would first ask specifically, what is it about your current situation, problem, obstacle that you want to alleviate? Let's start from there and then figure out from there, how can you find steps, small steps, doesn't always have to be giant leaps, to get to a resolution of a sliver of that problem, not the full problem. And that's the thing most of us, I include myself in it, we want to eliminate the problem. We want to fix the problem. And that's great. We all want to do that. But in order to fix the problem and eliminate the problem, you created the problem. The problem was created. Its creation is so large that it's going to take time to chip away at it. It's not just going to vanish. That's not how life works. If that's how life works, all of us would have no problems. But that's not the great challenge that's being afforded to us living on this giant rock in space. We are in a situation where we all have to work with one another, find some commonality, and figure our way through the mess, the hatred, the violence, the death, the pain, the struggle, the disappointment, the sorrow. We have to figure it out.
So true. So true. Yeah, and like you say, a slice. We often try to take the whole gulp and take a huge bite, but sometimes a slice is way better than the whole pie, right?
I mean, look at all these billionaires with corporations trying to replace people's jobs with AI. They're they're trying to take away a huge problem away, but life will tell you that it's not the way it works. You can use, I mean, trust me, I'm a huge proponent of using AI, but AI is a tool. It's not a panacea. It's not going to fix everything. So in time and on time, as the saying goes, and sometimes people have to learn the hard way.
So, Savio, how can people learn more about you? How can they connect with you? And how can they maybe look into your book, I Survived Cancer, and This Is How I Did It book that's
Yeah.
available on Amazon?
Sure. It's all available on my website, saviopclemente.com, SAVIOPCLEMENTE.com. I have my keynotes work there. I have a few spots still left in 2026, which is great that I still have spots left. They can also view my TEDx talk. Every Wednesday, I write a Substack newsletter called The Human Resolve. On there, I talk about the head, heart, and gut intelligence. Also, my interviews right now, like I mentioned, I'm running an interview series with CEOs and CMOs on the healthcare leadership operating system. So that's been fascinating. And then they can find me on every social media platform at The Human Resolve. And I named it The Human Resolve because all we have is resolve and resolution. That's the only thing we have that we can fix.
Beautiful. Well, I wish you all the best in your new adventures and your speaking engagements and taking a little slice out of changing people's lives one step at a time, right? So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that with the world. Thanks for sharing that with our listener today. A final message from Savio to the listener. Anything to add on there to close it up?
I would say that what we talked about today does seem like it's a lot of work, but it doesn't have to be ingested in one bite. It really doesn't. It's just about being present and available, and also allowing yourself the ability to grow. I think most of us think that when we get to a certain age or a certain position or certain title, that there's no more growth. But life will constantly show us, just like nature does, it changes all the time, that the only thing we can hang on to is change. So we ride the adventure. We don't say no to it. We stay. We allow, we evolve, and we find our way through. And I think the key is to find our way through with one another in an age of disruption. I think that's the number one key.
Connection, human connection, definitely. Yeah, beautiful. All right. Thank you once again for sharing with the world. And I wish you all the best into the future. And for those listening today, hope you enjoyed this great episode. For those who are experiencing cancer or somebody who in their family they love, Savio is probably a great person to connect with and learn from him as well. And also check out his books. So until next time, everyone stay well. We're out. That's a wrap.
Excellent.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.